There are times when I've had enough of everything. Follow those lines. Do what's for me, I get inside. And now it's dark, black to the night.
Good morning, Acadiana. Thanks for tuning in to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media, in partnership with The Advocate, our local source of journalism and journalistic integrity and professionalism. They are reporting the news to us every day, and we are reading that news for those in the audience who would prefer to hear the news as opposed to read it. And we are joined this morning, as we are almost every morning, by Bruce Cohen. Bruce, how are you this morning, buddy?
Well, again, I'm awake, I'm breathing, so it's a good day.
Well, I am very glad that I saw your face pop up on here. I'm glad to have you reading the news. And thank you so much. I'm going to go listen on Cypress Street.
Yeah, I must have given you a little bit of a scare there. I came in a little late this morning.
Well, I was just concerned for you, but I'm glad to see you.
No, I'm here and ready to go. Thank you, Matt.
Thank
you as always for being the guy at the helm of the magic that allows me to speak to you, Acadiana. So good morning to you. Welcome. And we'll get right into the news. Obviously, there's a lot going on. So here in Lafayette, bystanders among 5 hurt and shooting downtown by Megan Wyatt. Lafayette police are investigating what unfolded during an overnight shooting in downtown Lafayette that injured 5 people, including innocent bystanders. Officers responded about 2 a.m. Sunday to a disturbance in the 400 block of Jefferson Street, where a verbal argument had turned physical, according to Sergeant Wayne Griffin of the Lafayette Police Department. When police arrived at the scene, 3 individuals were suffering from gunshot wounds to their upper torsos, and 2 individuals were suffering from gunshot wounds to their lower torsos. Medical assistance was provided on the scene. 4 individuals were transported to a hospital, and 1 refused any further medical assistance. All 5 were in stable condition as of about 9 a.m. Sunday. Griffin said some of the victims are thought to have been have been innocent bystanders based on witness statements. They're still trying to sort everything out, Griffin said. It was chaotic. They're still pulling in witnesses and reviewing video footage and trying to piece this thing together. No arrests have been made yet in the case. The investigation is ongoing. We don't know who did this shooting, Griffin said. That's why the arrest hasn't been made yet. It's all still under investigation, but I do know innocent bystanders got hit. We're still trying to figure everything out. Anyone with information can call the Lafayette Police Department at 337-291-8600. And just a side note, Saturday night was the first official unvirtual art walk that we've had in many months. So there were a lot of people in the downtown area Saturday night, early Sunday morning. And moving on, it's time to get their knee out of our neck. George Floyd rally protesters marched to Girard Park over policing reforms by Megan Wyatt. Hundreds of people marched from Hyman Memorial to Girard Park on Sunday evening as rain smeared ink from protest signs that call for an end to police brutality in the Lafayette community. Claps of thunder punctuated unified chants as a diverse group reminded people that without justice, there will be no peace. When we say no peace, we don't mean we're going to burn down buildings, said Devin Norman of the Lafayette chapter of the NAACP. When we say no justice, no peace, we mean until you give us justice, we are going to gather. Till you give us justice, we are going to come together as a collective. We will knock on the doors of the courthouse. We will stand in front of the police station. Because Lafayette, it's time for you to get your knee out of our neck. It's time for Republicans to get their knee out of our neck. It's time for the South Side to get their knee out of our neck. It's time for the police department and the sheriff's office and everybody else to get their knee out of our neck. Sunday's event was the latest in the area following the May 25th death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police. Just one day earlier, people gathered on the sidewalk along Ambassador Caffrey Parkway with signs that demanded justice for Floyd and changes to local policing. They also knelt for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the amount of time a police officer knelt on Floyd's neck. Protests have taken place in River Ranch at the University of Louisiana Lafayette campus. Sybil and Jacoby Carter, who are Black, attended the Sunday protest with their teenager Jade, who was 14. They also attended the one last weekend in River Ranch. It's been 3 weeks and we're still not tired yet, Jade said. And I don't think we're going to get tired anytime soon. I feel like it's our time now to step up and end this once and for all because it's been 300 years and counting. Although protests in some parts of the country have turned violent, those in the Acadiana area have been mostly peaceful. Diverse groups have stood in solidarity with most wearing face masks to prevent further spread of the coronavirus. The same was true Sunday. The march to Girard Park was organized by the UL Student Action and Organizing Committee and the Acadiana Coalition Against Social Injustice. The groups also partnered with the Move the Mindset to demand the removal of the General Mouton statue on Jefferson Street. Scott Jordan, a 52-year-old white man, attended Sunday's march to stand in solidarity with his Black neighbors and friends. All the evidence and data is clear. There is a different justice system for African Americans, Jordan said. There's a different justice system for white people. I think it's just important to try to stop that. Everything that's been captured on video lately has been happening for years. And I think we're all just reached a tipping point. We're all tired of it. Okay, moving on. UL football legends who try to build a bridge. Black lawmen in Strata protest debates by Kevin Foote. Both felt the overwhelming need to turn it off. Jeff Mitchell was a three-time All-Big West defensive lineman for the UL Raging Cajuns from 1992 to 95. Today, he is a Louisiana state trooper with 24 years of experience in law enforcement. Tyrell Fenroy left the Cajuns in 2008 as the program's all-time leading rusher and is now a member of the Lafayette Police Department. When the video of George Floyd's death came to their attention, the two reactions weren't all that different. Mitchell couldn't bring himself to watch it. To you, the truth I started hearing about before I even saw it on my social media feed, said the former Lauraville High standout and UL Athletic Hall of Famer. When I pulled up, I was about to play it, and I didn't. The only thing I have seen is a picture of the officer's knee on his neck. I was thinking, man, I don't want to see that. It was just too much hurt, too much anger, too much frustration involved. It kind of brings a shadow on all of it, Mitchell said. Fenroy said he watched about half of it and had to turn it off. The video within itself, it was heartbreaking, he said. It's unacceptable. It's frustrating. That's behavior that's just unacceptable. You just can't have those incidents happen. But just because of the two all-time UL football greats couldn't stomach digesting the offensive video didn't mean they weren't moved by it. They were even more motivated to do their jobs better, and they were motivated last week to take part in a teleconference with current UL football players in an attempt to educate. Being a police officer, my goal is to try to be that bridge. Be part of that bridge from a Black police officer to the community and to the public, Fenroy said. Try to bring that trust back, bring that love back, bring that I can count on you no matter who you are and what color you are, what gender you are, whatever you're identified as. You're going to call on me, and I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to do my job and not going to discriminate against you no matter who you are. Joined by other members of the law enforcement, the group covers such topics as downtown issues, traffic stops, what to do when pulled over by a police officer, what your rights are in videotaping, how to handle confrontations, and use of force policies. In addition to education, Fenroy and Mitchell offer their help in the future to any player with questions or specific needs. The biggest thing I'm hoping they get out of it is that we're approachable, Mitchell said. We're just like them. We were once in their shoes. We have a family to go to home just like they do. We have a family that supports us and is proud of us just like they do. Just be yourself on the side of the road. In Fenroy's case, it wasn't that long ago when heeding such advice would have been useful. During his playing days, former St. Charles Catholic applause stand-up drove a midnight blue-black 1996 Ford Thunderbird with dark tinted windows with a sound system on the inside, and I had some 26-inch rims. I had some big wheels with some small tires on there. Fenroy told the players the story of how many times he was stopped by police officers when trying to return home. I was never harassed on that side, but as far as the profiling, I was stopped so many times in that car driving from Lafayette to back home to the New Orleans area, he said. It got to the point where I had a personalized license plate on the back so they knew who was stopping. Back and forth questioning was beneficial for all involved. I think it went really well, Mitchell said. The questions that were asked by the players and coaches definitely were some things that you wonder about that are good questions, things that sometimes the public needs to know. It's not routine for people to get traffic stops every day. I do it every day, but it's my job. But a normal citizen can make you a little uneasy or unsure, so having a little bit of information can be very beneficial to them. UL senior quarterback Levi Lewis said he left the meeting feeling more educated and more comfortable. I asked a couple of inmates how they felt about it, and they felt the same way, Lewis said. I think we all left that Zoom meeting with something that we didn't know and more knowledge on the subject. Brought more knowledge onto the situation to make both sides more comfortable so us people are not afraid or nervous when a cop pulls you over. Made us more comfortable and more knowledge to the situation, knowing that they have to do when you're in a cop's presence and knowing what you should be doing and what not to do. The discussion is just one more example of being more proactive to create change. Try to find a way to bring more people together, said Lewis, who urged not just talk, but more action. For instance, our team made a video to bring more awareness into the situation to make people more aware of things. Then what we learned from that Zoom call, we can spread it out to family members and friends and then spread onto different amounts of people. While the aftermath of Floyd's tragic death has stirred emotions around the country, both Fenroy and Mitchell are thankful for the peaceful protests throughout South Louisiana. The protests were needed because the message needs to get out, said Mitchell, who said the state troopers stayed behind the scenes during protests and allowed local agencies to take the lead. We've come a long way, but obviously we still have a way to go. Them doing it peacefully, nonviolent, I think that's the way to go, so that the message doesn't get swept under the rug and it doesn't happen again in the future. Both hope the players and everyone in the local community never experience such an outrageous reaction from a local police officer. I just can't watch that video because I know the guys I work with. That would never happen, Fenroy said. You hold somebody accountable regardless of who they are to prevent things like that. We have policies in place that prevent things like that. To see that, you just have to know better. We have policies in our training, and we go back to our training again, retrain and retrain and retrain. We train to where if you come in these situations, you know what to do because the training is there. Our administration pulls those policies in place so to where our officers can have it and be good. Fenroy mentions or maintains basic use of force policies should have prevented Floyd's death. The use of force policy of what to do and the different steps you can take, he said. The verbal judo relating with empathy with the public. When you get on the scene, you already have that officer presence. Depending on what the scene is, I try my hardest to de-escalate the scene if I see it's escalating. We train a lot on the de-escalation. You try to de-escalate the situation. Mitchell's assistant rank should not factor in a situation. We try to approach it on the rank if you see something that's not safe. Raise your hand and point it out no matter what rank you are, Mitchell explained. Same thing as on the scene when you have multiple officers on the scene. Somebody can say, okay, that's enough. We got to calm down. Doesn't matter if you're the lowest guy on the totem pole. If you see something not right, I think most of our guys are approachable enough, have enough control, and let somebody else come in and diffuse the situation so that we don't have any of their problems. That doesn't mean both are aren't passionate, and constantly try to improve. Mitchell foresees even more sensitivity training. I know we had some things implemented, and I know how such things have happened. We took it a couple of steps forward, Mitchell said. That way we can educate everybody from the bottom up. Some people don't interact with another culture. It's not about educating everybody from top to bottom. It's about educating everybody from top to bottom. Fenroy urges a greater emphasis on mental health. Not just after you pre-hire, it shouldn't stop there, he said. The mental health should go throughout the career because you don't know the things you deal with, the things you see on the street. PTSD can be an issue. I think mental health evaluation should happen throughout your whole career. After you finish 25 or 30 years after law enforcement, you should be evaluated again. You and your post-career just try and better help our officers from the things that they see from the first day to the 25 or 30 years after their career is over. Mitchell said he only wishes each group of the community had the same amount or the same bond football teammates have. I played there 20-something years ago, and when I see any of these guys, it doesn't matter if they're white or black, we're like brothers, he said. We catch up and we just have the bond. All those blood, sweat, tears are selling out for each other on the field every day. We were fortunate that we won a couple of co-championships in the Big West, so we know what it takes to accomplish these things. Years later, those bonds are still there. All right, let's turn to a couple of public service announcements. Homegrown Pop-Up Market is coming to Macomb VZ Cultural District. The Homegrown Pop-Up Market, presented by the Macomb VZ neighborhood, is a family-friendly monthly community pop-up market happening every third Saturday from 2 to 6 p.m., featuring local businesses and artists. So this coming Saturday, June 20th, 2020, we'll be bringing fresh veggies, vendors, and ideas to the neighborhood. Macomb VZ neighborhood and its friends will host vendor booths, live media, games, and activities for all. The event will be held from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Macomb VZ Community House. That's at 419 12th Street at the intersection of 12th and South Magnolia Streets in Lafayette, Louisiana. Admission is free and the event is open to the public. Brought to you in a coordination with the Macomb VZ neighborhood, Veggies on the Go, Health Utarian, and the Northside Vegan. Food and beverages will be available on site for purchase. Camp Unique from the Dreams Foundation. Every summer, the Dreams Foundation of Acadiana hosts the greatest camp of all, Camp Unique. Camp Unique is suited for individuals with special needs. Camp Unique will be held July 13th through the 17th for ages 5 to 13 and July 20th to 24 for ages 14 and up. Fee will be $75, and the theme this year is Peace and Love. All Camp Unique sessions will be held at Lark's Acadian Village. Individuals of all ages have a blast participating in a camp that is specifically tailored to them. You get the opportunity to take part in activities such as art, fitness, karaoke, music, and dance, as well as getting a Camp Unique t-shirt and a snack every day. A highlight of Camp Unique this year will be the storytelling session by Chief Greyhawk Perkins, commented Dreams Foundation Executive Director Danielle Watkins. As a recognized expert on Native American and American colonial history, Perkins has inspired many audiences over the years, sharing tales of ancient cultures as a travel storyteller and as a teacher of various subjects in Louisiana's school system. The registration from the Camp Unique can be found on the Dreams Foundation of Acadiana website, dreamsfoundationaca.org. Volunteers are also being sought at this time. If you're interested in volunteering, please complete the application on the Dreams website under the Volunteer tab. For more information, you can call Camp Unique, contact Danielle Watkins via email at Danielle, DONIELLE, at dreamsfoundationaca.org or phone 337-982-1609. Okay, let's move on. The next story. School officials work to avoid cuts. Contingency plan, a focus in Lafayette by Katie Gagliano. Lafayette Parish School System is developing contingency plans to prevent a budget shortfall should the coronavirus pandemic continue to disrupt sales tax collections in the 2021 fiscal year. Billy Guidry, District Chief Financial Officer, made a pitch for two possible shortfall fixes at Wednesday's school board meeting. Both would involve shuffling money between funds and making use of reserve funds and a projected surplus to prevent cutting into budgeted expenses. Projecting exactly what a shortfall may look like is difficult, he said. Much of the potential future impact depends on how well the economy picks up as local businesses reopen during the state's phased approach and whether businesses must again close in the future. It's a fluid situation, Guidry said. Tax collections in April, based on March sales, were down 1.2 million, and May collections, based on April sales, were down 1.6 million on expectations, according to board documents. Guidry said by phone Friday, it's important to begin planning now so the district can act from a position of caution and financial stability, rather than reacting after the new fiscal year begins and the district begins to spend its discretionary funds. Gives you more of an opportunity to identify offsets than if you waited further down the road, he said. In the plan presented on Wednesday, the district would initiate the transfer of $4.5 million from anticipated surplus revenues to the self-funded construction fund for the rebuilding of Karen Crow Heights Elementary, Lafayette High, and Prairie Elementary before closing out their accounts for the fiscal year 2020. Instead of actually being transferred, the money would be idle and be available for us in the event of a revenue drop-off. If the shortfall doesn't materialize, the money could be transferred to the construction account or be allocated elsewhere depending on the board's wishes, Guidry said. Guidry said, based on current projections, he believes, despite the economic downturn, the district could still end the fiscal year with a surplus. The expectation is based on offsets from district schools not operating at full capacity between March and May, sales tax revenue trending higher than budgeted before March, and stable revenue sources outside tax collections, he said. I won't be able to say with certainty until the numbers are final. What I'm basing the assumption on is what I'm aware of, Guidry said. Step 2 of the plan, the district would withhold annual transfers of a combined $5 million from the self-funded construction and capital improvements for use in the general fund to cover possible shortfalls. Each fund typically receives $2.5 million annually from sales tax collections to support regular expenditures. 2021, the district would take the necessary money from each other's funds reserve if these sales tax dollars are needed to cover a shortfall, Guidry said. If they're not, the annual sales tax transfer will move ahead as planned and the reserves would remain untouched. The self-funded construction reserve stands at $7.16 million, and the capital improvements reserve is at $8.6 million, Guidry said. The district likes to have at least $2.5 million in reserve to cover the next year's expenses in case an economic downturn, so both funds are well above the goal, he said. Though recommended, the plan isn't set in stone. The options will be brought back for approval by the school board in August once the final accounts for the fiscal year 2020 have been closed out. The goal of putting the plans before the public and board now is to allow time for feedback and redirection if the board wants to take another route, Guidry said. Guidry said he built the plan around revenue projections issued by the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office in consultation with the state's Revenue Estimating Conference. The report projected optimistic, moderate, and pessimistic scenarios for the school board, ranging from $3.22 million to $9.5 million in lost sales tax revenues, board documents said. Even if they're off a little, it at least gets us in the right ballpark to where we can manage those adjustments, as opposed if we won't allow for the $9.5 million. That's a lot more difficult to react to. By having that information, I think it allows us to be proactive, and it reminds us that we need to be cautious as we move forward, especially if there are any kind of budget increases come our way for consideration, Guidry said. District 6 board member Justin Santani said he's pleased with the proposal and think it's the right way to go. Guidry's proposals were the product of several years of conservative budgeting and tax projections following a mid-year shortfall in 2014-2015 that led to bad budget cuts, he said. Since then, the board and district have worked to prevent similar situations. Having financial options that don't require cuts to personnel or services is a good position to be in, Santani said. I'm happy we have the latitude to take a wait-and-see approach on how we approach the next year, he said. District 1 board member Mary Morrison, current board vice president, echoed Santani's sentiments. She said cuts should be avoidable because the school board took the bull by the horns and reassess the district's financial condition. But the uncertainty of the current economic situation begs cautions before making any final decisions. The last thing we want to do is to cut teachers and cut classrooms, but we just have to see what we're dealing with, she said. Morrison said she's confident district staff will make measured recommendations like those presented Wednesday and work to avoid cuts. All right, let's read a couple more PSAs. If you don't already know this, you should. Vitalant begins testing all blood donations for antibodies to COVID-19. Vitalant became the first national blood bank to test all blood donations for antibodies to SARS-CoV-2, which is the coronavirus that causes COVID-19. The nation's largest independent nonprofit blood collectors serving hospital patients in South Louisiana is providing the best results to donors who complete successful blood donations, which are critically needed now. The antibody test, authorized by the FDA, will indicate if the donor's immune system has produced antibodies to the virus, regardless of whether they ever showed symptoms. It is possible that over the time, the broad use of antibody tests and clinical follow-up will provide the medical community with more information on whether a person who has recovered from COVID-19 is at a low risk of infection, and if so, for how long. For more information, you can call or visit vitalant.org/COVID-free, or you can call 877-258-4825. Donors are urged to give blood as soon as possible. Again, if you want to make an appointment, call 877-258-4825. The United Way of Acadiana has teamed up with AOC and other local educational groups for Learn United, bridging the digital gap to provide educational resources for households that don't have internet but do have a television. The Learn United program airs weekdays from 8 to 2 on AOC2, Cox 16, LUS 4, and streaming at aocinc.org/watch. But daily schedules and to submit content for the program, visit the United Way of Acadiana website at unitedwayofacadiana.org/learn-united. All right, folks, it's about that time during our broadcast when we look at the day in history, the zodiac or the horoscope, and the funerals happening today in the Acadiana area. Today in history, today is Monday, June 15th, the 167th day of 2020. There are 199 shopping days left in the year. Today's highlight in history on June 15, 1775, the Second Continental Congress voted unanimously to appoint George Washington head of the Continental Army. On this date, in 1215, England's King John put his seal to the Magna Carta, the Great Charter, at Runnymede. In 1836, Arkansas became the 25th state. In 1864, Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton signed an order establishing a military burial ground, which became Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. In 1904, more than 1,000 people died when a fire erupted aboard the steamboat General Slocum in New York's East River. 1934, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, or FDR, signed an act making the National Guard part of the U.S. Army in the event of a war or national emergency. 1944, American forces began their successful invasion of Saipan during World War II. B-29 superfortresses carried out their first raids on Japan. 1955, the United States and Britain signed a cooperation agreement concerning atomic information for mutual defense purposes. 1969, the variety show Hee Haw, a fast-paced mixture of country music and comedy skits, debuted on CBS TV. 1991, Mount Pinatubo in the northern Philippines exploded in one of the biggest volcanic eruptions of the 20th century, killing about 800 people. 1996, Ella Fitzgerald, the First Lady of Song, died in Beverly Hills, California at age 79. In 2003, with a deadline posed for Iraqis to hand in heavy weapons, U.S. forces fanned out across Iraq to seize arms and put down potential foes. 10 years ago, in his first Oval Office address, President Barack Obama promised that we will make BP pay for the damage the company has caused, describing the massive oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico as a siege on the shores of America. 5 years ago, Rachel Dolezal resigned as president of the NAACP's Spokane chapter just days after her parents said she was a white woman posing as black. 1 year ago, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris held its first Mass since the devastating April 15th fire that ravaged its roof. The Archbishop of Paris wore a hard hat, helmet, and only about 30 people were allowed inside. Looking at some of today's birthdays, funk musician Leo Dosantinelli from the Meters is 74 out of New Orleans. Singer Russell Hitchcock from Air Supply is 71. Rock singer Steve Walsh is 69. Chinese President Xi Jinping is 67. Actor comedian Jim Belushi, John Belushi's brother, is 66. Actress Julie Haggerty is 65. Baseball Hall of Famer Wade Boggs is 62. Bluegrass musician Terry Smith is 60. Actress Helen Hunt is 57. Actress Courtney Cox from Friends fame is 56. Rock musician Jimmy McGee is 52. Actor rapper Ice Cube is 51. Actress Leah Remini is 50. And let's see, one more actor, Greg Vaughn, is 47. Thought for today: the times are not so bad as they seem. They couldn't be. Quote from John Franklin Carter, American commentator and author, born 1897, died 1967. Looking today at our zodiac or horoscope, if you're a Gemini, protect what you've worked so hard to obtain. Handle your money and reputation with care, build strength and gain respect. Personal improvement will boost confidence. Follow a healthy daily routine. Cancer, choose your words wisely. If you're emotional, you will end up in a no-win situation. Look for alternative ways to reach your objective. Complaining will lead to a stalemate. Leos, look for an outlet, a way to help, offer help to those less fortunate, or an activity that provides a physical or mental challenge. Learn from experience. Virgos, my birth sign, don't let challenges get you down or set you back. Find unique solutions that are geared to bringing about a positive lifestyle change. Libra, do something that will boost your morale, bring you one step closer to looking the way you want. Consider a physical workout, makeover, or trendy new outfit. Scorpio, be open to suggestions. Don't let anyone talk you into something that makes you feel uncertain or uncomfortable. Limit change by remaining focused on what's most important to you. Sagittarius, make an adjustment that encourages you to take better care of your finances, possessions, and yourself. Set up a home office or a workout room, or box up stuff you no longer use. Capricorn, change the way you do things at home. Fine-tuning your schedule to meet current demands will help you get ahead. Move structure and discipline are the keys to success. Aquarius, keep tabs on how much you spend. Unnecessary purchases will leave you short and stifle the way you live. Put more effort into preparing healthy meals and getting sufficient exercise. Pisces, confusion will set in due to the mixed messages you receive. When in doubt, go directly to the source and ask questions. Protect against injury and illness. Aries, your emotions will move your true feelings. Before you share your intentions with anyone, make sure that you trust him or her to keep a secret. Put your plans in place first. Taurus, and finally Taurus, go on a learning expedition and you'll pick up valuable information that will alter the way to use your skills. Change with the times and turn a negative into a positive. And as always, folks, the horoscope is an entertainment feature not based on scientific fact. Looking at the funerals today in the Acadiana area, Connie Meadows at the David or David, however you'd like to pronounce it, Funeral Home Chapel of Erath. That's at excuse me. That's at 2009 East Putnam Street in Erath at 2 p.m. Leanne Mouton, La Chapel de Martin and Castile at 1 p.m. And Emma Ramsey, Fountain Memorial Funeral Home in Lafayette at 1 p.m. Okay, and we go back to our first couple more PSAs. Keeping calm through the COVID hotline, feeling overwhelmed with stress, fear, and anxiety about the uncertainty surrounding the public health emergency or pandemic. The There is a special Keeping Calm Through COVID hotline you can call. This connects you to trained, compassionate counselors who can offer support and who can direct you to mental health and substance abuse counseling services. Trained counselors are available 24/7, and all calls are confidential. If you feel you need to reach out, call 866-310-7977. That's 866-310-7977. Medicaid resources. If you lost your job or if you have reduced hours, you may be eligible for Medicaid. You can apply online at mymedicaid.la.gov. You can also apply online or apply by phone by calling 1-888-342-6207 or by mail by sending information to Louisiana Medicaid, P.O. Box 91283, Baton Rouge, LA 70821. All state Medicaid offices are currently closed to the public. If additional assistance is needed, you can call again 888-342-6207. Locally, you can stop the spread or call instead #StopTheSpread for the latest COVID-19 updates and information. Visit 311lafayette.services. Call centers with volunteers and medical professionals are active 24/7 to answer your questions about COVID-19 and to determine if you need to get screened. You may also call 311 and press option 2 if you are a business owner, employee, or are looking for a job to get information about applying for a small business recovery loan, apply for unemployment benefits, and related programs. All right, folks, turning back to our news. A motorcyclist in critical condition after crash, staff report. The driver of a motorcycle is in critical condition after crashing Saturday near the intersection of Interstates 10 and 49. Lafayette Police Department is investigating the single vehicle crash, which happened at about 5 p.m. on Saturday. The driver is being treated for injuries at a local hospital. The investigation is ongoing. Judge's actions jeopardize murder case. Judicial oversight limits tested in Lake Charles donut shop slaying by John Zimmerman. State prosecutors to land a windfall last year, courtesy of the judge presiding in the case against a man accused of fatally stabbing a Lake Charles woman in 1998 during a robbery inside her donut shop. Michael Canaday, a judge on the 4th Judicial District Court, agreed in September to unseal records that Dennis Jerome Barty's attorneys had filed seeking approval for a court-funded expert witness. The records he unsealed at the request of Calcasieu Parish District Attorney John DeRosier's office spelled out the defense's game plan for undermining a DNA analysis that links Barty to the killing of Rose Bourne, 45, inside Paradise Donuts. Barty, 39, faces a second-degree murder charge that carries a term of life in prison if he's convicted. We're talking about uncut defense attorney plans to attack, said Adam Johnson, who is representing Barty along with attorney Todd Clemens. Prosecutors wasted no time buzzing down to the court's clerk's office for copies of the newly unsealed records before Canaday mentioned it to Johnson. Now Canaday has been forced off the case for that and other rulings he's made in the case. Barty's lawyers will take it further at a hearing on Wednesday, where they will argue that Canaday torpedoed their defense beyond repair because his recusal at a Friday hearing and that the charges should go away. When we find out that he had basically, without even a hearing, allowed the state to get access to our unfettered defense strategy, that stopped us in our tracks. That was truly shocking, Johnson said. That's a bell you can't unring. He knew what was in the record. A motion to recuse Canaday soon followed. Emails from the district attorney's office in response to a public records request from Barty's attorneys show that Canaday communicated with a prosecutor about the request to unseal the records weeks before he fulfilled it. These kinds of ex parte discussions or ex parte discussions are generally prohibited under judicial rules. Kennedy had denied having any such emails in response to a similar request from Barty's lawyers, who say they will have fought to keep the records secret had they known of the DA's request. Kennedy, 65, a former Paris school board member, has held a Division G seat since 2000 and is up for re-election this year. Through his secretary, he declined to comment on the case, citing judicial canons that bar it. State Appeals Court is still reviewing the decision by a colleague, Clayton Davis, to recuse Kennedy. The legal wrangling points to limits in the system for holding judges accountable in Louisiana, where the state Supreme Court hardly ever disciplines judges publicly and almost never for what they legally do in a black robe. Even with recusals, it's not enough for a judge to make faulty or one-sided rulings. Appeals courts are there to correct the error and keep the case on track. Most recusals come at the start of a case. In most cases, judges make the call themselves based on a relationship with one of the parties or prior work as a lawyer on the case, for instance. It's not unheard of, but it's unusual to have a judge recused for bias that's reflected in rulings in the case, said Diane Ciolino, a law school professor who represents judges in misconduct probes. A spokeswoman for the Supreme Court said Kennedy had never faced public discipline for misconduct. An investigation last year by the Times-Picayune, the Advocate, found that less than 1% of all judges subject to judicial complaints do so. Bias is a standard for recusals, and state law lays out 8 grounds that can result in a judge getting tossed. 7 of them deal with personal or professional ties with a party in the case. The 8th is a catch-all for a judge who is biased to such an extent that he would be unable to conduct fair and impartial proceedings. In recusing Kennedy, Davis cited all the rulings he made and the appeals court has made, and the motion to unseal that should not have been signed, probably without a hearing. In the ruling, Dennis said he was flummoxed by the state's rationale for seeking the sealed records in the first place. He asked Special Prosecutor Hugo Holland to explain, but the prosecutor demanded, claiming motives were irrelevant, or the prosecutor demurred, claiming motives were irrelevant and he hadn't read the records. It is what it is, replied Holland, better known as a prolific roving death penalty prosecutor for parishes across Louisiana. He added, I don't do things that are not I don't do things that are evil. It really doesn't make that much sense. It must be misprint. I don't do things that are evil. That should be it. Holland had boasted to local media about the strength of the DNA evidence against Barty, who was in prison when police announced a genetic match to material saved from the bloody donut shop. Barty was 7 years into a 40-year sentence on an attempted murder conviction for a different stabbing incident in Baton Rouge in 2006, when Lake Charles police brought him in for an interview, according to a state corrections official. It took 18 years in genetic science for detectives to track him down, but only hours to muck up the interrogation, court records show. Over more than 7 hours, Lake Charles police detectives and Deputy Police Chief Mark Krause drew a confession out of Barty that Kennedy blessed until the Third District Court of Appeal reversed him, later hammering Kennedy months later for trying to let a jury see it anyways as impeachment evidence. The later ruling came days just before Kennedy unsealed the defense records last September. The appeals court called Lake Charles police detectives' questioning of Barty an inquisition and his purported confession a product of police misconduct. It included false threats. Defendant was presented with a promise signed by the district attorney's office that the state would not seek the death penalty in exchange for his confession, the appeals court said. The court noted that Barty was 17 when he allegedly killed Bourne, too young for capital punishment, according to a 2005 U.S. Supreme Court ruling. The appeals court said detectives steamrolled Barty's intent to cut off questioning, by stating he is done talking. It was the very type of police misconduct the Supreme Court prohibited in its 1966 decision requiring police to read Miranda rights to those they arrest, the court found. Last week, the Louisiana Supreme Court heard arguments over the confession. Holland said he could not speak about details of an open case. Feel free to publish this as far as you're concerned, Barty said. He's a robber and a murderer, and we will seek to put him in prison for the rest of his natural life, he wrote. Barty's attorneys are also accused prosecutors of misconduct, claiming they intentionally missed a candidate in the courtroom and improperly communicated with him outside of it. In response to their motion to quash the incident or indictment against Barty, Holland declined to argue facts, writing that a trial is the last thing this defendant desires and that the state would address but one factual issue with testimony in Wednesday's hearing. He did not elaborate. Okay, video spurs debate over hate speech on campuses. Activists, experts eye restrictions by Brooks Kubana. You approach an outdoor market. You know the kind. Pavilion overhang, tables and booths on a concrete floor, people bustling above. Above hangs a sign, the marketplace of ideas. You enter. To the left, someone is handing out pamphlets while delivering a speech on the benefits of socialism. To the right, religious leaders are locked into a spirited debate. Two people step forward with a paper map and declare the earth is flat. Beyond them, someone is slowly shaking their head while spinning the globe. The path ahead appears endless. The voices all around appear limitless. Suddenly, someone yells, "I hate the N-word." There are no regulators in this market, so the yell continues. The voices continue, the path continues. Welcome to one of the most fundamental philosophical metaphors for freedom of speech, one of the bedrock pieces of the 45 words that make up the First Amendment and the U.S. Constitution. It is also a suitable metaphor for the contentious conundrum LSU leadership faces while it reviews the situation of an incoming student, Drew Dollar, who last week was caught in a viral video yelling the very phrase written 3 paragraphs above. The LSU Board of Supervisors and interim LSU President Tom Galligan are now caught in a decision that involves interpreting the First Amendment and Galligan's pledge to show Black students' leadership that Black lives matter. Legal experts say LSU is a public university, therefore a quasi-government agency, and subsequently cannot expel the incoming student, despite the calls from Black student leadership to do so, for speech that is protected under the law. Yet, as nationwide protests against police brutality and racial injustice continue in the backdrop, law experts, higher education officials, and social activists are among those who wonder if this is a time for an amendment that will give public universities more leeway to punish such speech. Several public voices concerned with the issue have called the incoming students' speech hateful and unfit for a college campus. And along with such statements, a common phrase emerged: hate speech is not free speech. However, hate speech is protected under the law. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes asserted in United States v. Schwimmer, 1929, that Americans have freedom for the thought that we hate. The opinion was reaffirmed unanimously by the Supreme Court in Mattel v. Tam, 2017, when Justice Samuel Alito wrote, "The proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express the thought that we hate." John Pierre, Chancellor of the Southern University Law Center, said he would disagree with that opinion. Hateful speech is harmful, he said, and it brings up another fundamental question. What would you want to protect hate? Why would you want to protect hate speech? In other words, with the marketplace of ideas, a phrase Holmes himself used in Abrams versus United States in 1919, be more productive than the voice yelling, "I hate the N-word," were removed from the floor. Holmes wrote that the best of the truth is the power of the thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market. Essentially, hate speech's falsity would get itself driven out of the market by truth. However, Jonathan Peters, a faculty member at the University of Georgia School of Law, said hate speech is usually targeted at individuals and groups that tend to be already marginalized, and hate speech could bully the marginalized out of the market. In practical political terms, Devin Woodson, an LSU junior and co-chair of the LSU Black Male Leadership Initiative, said that if you let up for a second, your opponent's ideals are already being enacted into law onto you, and the whole time you were trying to figure out why they had those ideals in the first place. You could argue, Peter said, that the marketplace of ideas would be better served if you did restrict hate speech to some extent, because you could create a more hospitable environment by diverse voices. The idea is tempting to believe, said Everett Bodine, the Libertarian candidate for the state Senate District 16 last year. But Bodine, Peters, and Pierre all agree that such an idea requires an answer to another foundational question: who gets to decide what hate speech is? And before I go any further, because there's more to the story, it is now 9:55, which usually means that the oral broadcast of this morning's newspaper live, or local news live, is being cut off at our TV stations, but you can continue to hear the broadcast because I do have this story and a couple other stories to read to finish up this morning's broadcast. You can go to our YouTube page, which is AOC Community Media, or you can go to our online streaming radio page, that is Cypress Street Radio, CYPR-ESS Street Radio and Play. And just punch in the play button and you continue to hear the news stories for this morning. So I will bid you farewell on the TV stations. I will continue to read for a few more minutes. So we're talking about free speech here. And this is all, there is just as a side note, there is an area at LSU that is an area designated for free speech, meaning that anybody can go in and have the forum to speak whatever is on their mind about whatever subject they intend to, without harassment. Because such an idea would require a new law or an amendment, the decision would be made by the government, and subsequently a potential hate speech law would then be enforced by law enforcement and reviewed by judicial courts. And it might make the dialogue better, Bodine said. I'm not going to dispute that potentially. I wish people would stop saying real ignorant stuff. But I think the harm of giving the government control of deciding what is and is not across the line is too dangerous. And I think more dangerous than that negative speech is in the first place. There is such government control against hate speech in foreign countries. In Canada, it's illegal to willfully promote hatred against any identifiable group by making statements. France criminalizes incitement to discrimination, hatred, or violence based on race, nationality, ethnicity, or religion, even if it's in a private conversation. In Germany, it's illegal to distribute Nazi memorabilia or deny the Holocaust happened. Similar laws in the U.S. would create instability in what the First Amendment would protect, Peters said. Bodine said a slippery slope leads to the condemning of more speech. What happened today, Pierre said, may not be acceptable tomorrow. Devin Scott, an LSU sophomore, said discerning hate speech is easier and more stable than one might think, especially with specific cases like LSU's dollar. He literally said he hates the N-word, said Scott, who is LSU's senior Senate Vice Chairman of Student Life, Diversity, and Community Outreach. Once you go that far, and it's blatant that it's coming out of a place of hate and not out of you disliking something, it's no slippery slope at all. It's just as clear as day that this is hate speech, and he should not be allowed to come out to LSU. If LSU were a private institution, legal experts say, dismissing a student based on speech wouldn't be an issue because freedom of speech is not protected when it comes to private entities. It's why a store manager can punish an employee for offending a customer. It's why an athlete can be fined by a professional franchise for saying something against team policy. It's why a journalist can be suspended by a news agency for publishing a tweet deemed inappropriate. Why is that possible? Before the Civil War, states didn't have to adopt the Bill of Rights, which includes the First Amendment. After the war, the 14th Amendment was used to gradually apply the Bill of Rights to state and local governments for an incorporation process that didn't begin until the 1920s. However, some sort of governmental involvement is required to violate rights based on the 14th Amendment. Therefore, public universities, which are government-funded schools, qualify as government action, while private universities do not. There are exceptions, LSU Scalligan said, if there's a law. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin in both public and private sectors. So, could there perhaps be a law so narrow in scope that it only gives public universities the same abilities to make judgments on speech as a private school? It would have to be very precise, said Callaghan, who was dean of LSU Law before becoming interim president. It would have to be special. I would question whether a law that broadly delegated the power to define hate speech to a university or city would pass constitutional muster, because that would be a total delegation of the right to make the definition. And I think the court would be very wary of where somebody might draw a line. Such a law could go against Supreme Court precedent, as in Papish versus Board of Curators of the University of Missouri in 1973, which said public universities can't punish students for the mere dissemination of ideas. Even if a law somehow passed, would such a law against hate speech on a public university's campus push back against racism? I don't know if it necessarily would, Pierre said, because of what would happen, in my opinion, is that people will alter their speech for a particular goal, but you wouldn't get at the root of the problem. It's become covert. People develop code language. It becomes covert, not convert, covert. There's certainly a risk, he said, that by denying a student entrance to a university due to racist speech, it only reinforces a racist belief and denies a student the community for reform in a diverse and educational environment. I think rather than focus on trying to deny admission to a student, Pierre said, perhaps the focus has to be, let's examine the history of the institution and the policies that the institution has and the practices that the institution has, and let us determine what practices and policies need to be changed. Black student leadership proposed 6 key points they wanted LSU to change within its practices and policies, which included increasing the ratio of minority faculty and correcting issues of blatant racism and discrimination on campus. And Woodson said it's difficult to reconcile LSU's commitment to change if those who make blatantly racist statements are allowed to enter campuses. It's the American in me that wants to state that we're all here to make a difference and we're all here to do better, Woodson said. I want to give him the second chance doing better and accepting and cleaning his act up, but not superficially. I want to dive into what is the real reason and the systemic issue of the perpetuation of racism. And until we have that conversation, it's very hard for people to say he does or does not deserve acceptance in this community of thoughts and ideas. That article, I had to read that whole article. It's very prevalent during what's in this time and in regards to what's happening around our country. To continue, hospitals, state face deepest fear of doubled health safety threats. Hurricane virus pose overlapping risks by Emily Woodruff. Dr. Jim Aiken knows how to provide care during hurricanes. He manned the Superdome for Category 4 Hurricane Georges in 1998 and stood on Charity Hospital's ramp as a final evacuation boat sputtered up after Hurricane Katrina. But the steady stream of coronavirus patients that flooded University Medical Center at the peak of the pandemic has given Aiken, a professor of emergency medicine at LSU Health Sciences Center, cause for extreme concern this hurricane season. In May, as Aiken and his colleagues saw COVID-19 hospitalizations decline, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration forecasts a hurricane season that will be busier than usual, with potentially 3 to 6 major hurricanes. By June 1st, the first day of hurricane season, what would become Tropical Storm Cristobal was making its way towards Louisiana, and coronavirus infections were slowly starting to rise. My deepest fear is for us to be back where we were in March and have a Category 3 come in, Aiken said. A busy storm season is a worry for Louisiana hospitals and other healthcare providers every year, but the ongoing pandemic had made preparations even more critical. Providers and the state health department are sizing up the risks and rethinking emergency response tactics. Some hospitals are stocking up on personal protective equipment or PPE and other supplies. Others are changing how they manage non-essential staff and patients' families. Evaluations, if they occur, will likely happen earlier to give one more time for larger patient loads or additional precautions. If there is a future hurricane, we'd handle evacuation much differently than we have in the past, said Tom Patrias, the Chief Operating Officer at Tulane Health System. It will be a very big lift to move patients for it not to be warranted. In May and June, the FEMA released over 120 pages of documents outlining how state and local agencies should respond to an emergency within an emergency. FEMA recommended that hospitals have an evacuation plan that includes moving PPE and the life-saving ventilators and dialysis machines that could be in short supply of coronavirus cases against surge. They highlighted the need for an alert system if shortages arise. The agency also told officials to identify additional medical facilities that could provide long-term care should evacuate areas be damaged. Louisiana hospitals are already heeding the warnings. Stephanie Manson, the Chief Operating Officer at Our Lady of the Lake Regional Medical Center in Baton Rouge, said they've already been stocking up on PPE and other supplies. When a storm is coming, both medical supplies and food, we would stock up more than we would need in case the supply chain is interrupted, said Manson. In any hospital situation, we have patients in isolation and infection. The difference now is the volume. We might have more. Luckily, hospitalizations in Louisiana are nowhere near what they once were. After reaching a peak of 2,134 on April 13th, hospitalizations were at 556 on Sunday. In recent weeks, the state is moving to reopen more of its economy, at the same time wearing a mask, where medical experts say is among the most effective methods for slowing the spread of the disease, has morphed into political issues. That's meant less compliance than some officials would hope. So much depends on how people comply with wearing masks and social distancing, said Aiken. You don't want to get infected during hurricane season. If cases rise into the peak of hurricane season in August and September, hospitals may have more patients in need of evacuation should a storm arrive. They may also have to make tough choices about who can stay in an environment where more people means a greater chance of infection. During Katrina and many hurricanes before 2005, Hospitals served as shelters for not only patients, but often their families and the families of staff. That complicated the necessary evacuations when the levees failed. Tulane Health System, Lafayette General Medical Center, and Ochsner Health said they would limit those sheltering on site to essential people. In the past, family members have been allowed to shelter with patients in some cases. If you lose power or water, supplies, and food, you want to have less people to take care of in the hospital, said Patrios. Even a small increase of COVID-19 patients will complicate hospital's hurricane response further. Tulane Medical Center created additional negative pressure rooms, which prevent infectious droplets from spreading throughout the air to deal with coronavirus patients. They require open windows, something that won't work during a storm. Our Lady of the Lake, Ochsner, and other large hospital systems like Tulane Health System, which is majority owned by HCA Healthcare, said they were relying on their facilities in other areas to take on patients during evacuation. But if surrounding facilities are already straining to care for patients because of a surge in coronavirus hospitalizations, some may need to use non-hospital settings like hotels, according to Dr. Joe Cantor, an official with Louisiana Department of Health. The receiving facility not only has to be willing to accept the patients, some of which might be COVID, they have to have capacity to accept them, said Cantor. Another factor making preparations this year more complicated than others is the strain already placed on hospital staff. Doctor and hospital executives acknowledged that the surge in patients in March and April was one of the most taxing times in their careers. Adding a major hurricane will push the frontline nurses, doctors, and other staff even harder. When we had significantly more patients in-house at the height of the pandemic, our teams were very tired, said Patrick Gandy, the Chief Executive Officer of Lafayette General Medical Center. We did everything we could to rotate staff through units. Another wave of patients, should cases rise again, would take its toll on the medical system and those who hold it up, Aiken said. Aiken worked for 6 days straight during Katrina, sleeping about 4 hours a night, but that was after a normal spring season at the hospital. This year, the workers that might be on back-to-back shifts after sleepless nights have already been in the coronavirus trenches for months. We're tired, Aiken said. Emotionally, we were seeing things that were tough. This is what we'll do, and we'll be here. But are we in the same state we were last year on June 1st? I would say no. And our last story of the morning, Senate okays study of police tactics by Will Santel and Mark Ballard. In a rare Sunday evening session, the state Senate easily approved a proposal that would authorize hearings on police practices after the death of George Floyd. The vote was 34-0, sending the plan to the House for more debate. The Senate, in a 45-minute session, also approved the bill by Senator Beth Mizell, Republican from Franklinton, aimed at extending internet access to rural areas. Both topics were on the agenda as lawmakers begin the final weeks of the special session, which has to end by June 30th at 6 p.m. Approval of an operating budget by July 1st is a key priority, as well as renewed debate Monday on efforts to reduce car and truck insurance rates. The police proposal, Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 7, is sponsored by Senator Cleo Fields, Democrat from Baton Rouge. It has set up a task force of state lawmakers, law enforcement, academic leaders, and others to review a wide range of topics, including training, screening, racial bias, recognition, misconduct, and eliminating bad actors. The study was sparked by the death of Floyd, a 46-year-old Black man who died May 25th in Minneapolis after a white police officer held him on the ground with his knees on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. Fields' proposal said Floyd's death has focused public discourse on the causes of police brutality and the use of excessive force, especially when used against people of color. The senator told colleagues Sunday he has never been prouder as a senator than he was last week when every member of the committee that heard his bill signed on as co-authors. And it sends a message to the rest of the state that the Senate cares and wants to do what is right, he said. The panel is supposed to hold its first gathering by August 15th and make its recommendations to the legislature by February 1st in time to debate separate legislation by fields that would ban the use of chokeholds by police, require officers to undergo psychological analysis, and require that officers step in when their colleagues are breaking the rules. Fields said he will push the issue in the fall if, as expected, the legislature holds a second special session to tackle budget and other issues sparked by the coronavirus pandemic. The only change Sunday was to expand what was a 14-member task force to include students and others. The new lineup would include the president of the Louisiana Council of Student Body Presidents, the president of the Louisiana Association of Chiefs of Police, an official of Together Louisiana, the superintendent of the Office of State Police, and the chair of the Legislative Youth Advisory Council. The proposal breezed through the Senate panel last week. However, a similar bill in the House by Representative Ted James, Democrat from Baton Rouge, won committee approval there only after controversy and the removal of references to Floyd in that resolution. What James's proposal will be debated in the House is unclear. The Senate then approved legislation of 34-0 vote that will set up a framework for companies to provide high-speed internet to rural parts of the state. Senate Bill 10 of the special session by Mizell, Senate President Pro Temp, now heads to the Louisiana House for consideration. The broadband issue took on added importance when public schools were forced to rely on distance learning after classrooms were closed in mid-March, leaving lots of students unable to keep up with their peers because of the internet and other shortcomings. Governor John Bel Edwards had vetoed Mizell's legislation that passed without a single no vote during the regular session at the end of May. The rural electric cooperatives, on whose equipment in the broadband technology would be attached, opposed the legislation because of an amendment attached to the request of the state's big communication companies forbid co-ops from competing for the internet business from most of the customers who already were connected through phone and cable lines, albeit often with much slower speeds. In its final form, however, rather than expanded access to broadband, which was Mizell's intent, the bill prohibits an electric cooperative from providing broadband in serviced areas and at the same time requires an electric cooperative that provides broadband service in an unserved area to give other broadband service providers non-discriminatory access to its electric delivery system, Edwards wrote in his veto message that was released Friday. Mizell said she had met Friday with officials from the large communications companies, the rural cooperatives, and the Louisiana Public Service Commission to agree on wording that was approved before the full Senate voted on the measure Sunday night. She added that Edwards had seen the agreement and he's good with it. Jeff Arnold, Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Louisiana Electric Co-ops, sat in the Senate gallery watching the vote and said he backed the new bill. Nonprofit rural cooperatives were formed about 80 years ago during the New Deal to provide electricity in regions of the country too sparsely populated for investor-owned utilities to turn a profit. Co-ops already have the right-of-ways established and the poles erected to serve about 1 million rural customers, whom they call members. Broadband companies will be able to attach their equipment to the co-op's apparatus to hurry the high-speed internet connection. Well, that's it, folks. That about wraps up the news for today. Thank you for sticking with me past our regular time. I appreciate it. There were some stories I definitely wanted to get out and read to you this morning. We do this every Monday through Friday for our community, people in our community who are either visually impaired or don't have access to a newspaper or the news cycle. We do this every Monday through Friday from 9 to around 10 or a little bit above this morning. to bring you the news. And we appreciate doing that, appreciate you listening. So tune in every Monday through Friday to hear what's going on in Acadiana and around the state. Again, as I always say, be safe, stay healthy, and please be kind to each other. If you're interested in becoming a newspaper volunteer reader, you can go to aocinc.org and sign up on our volunteer newspaper reading form and become part of our newspaper reading family. Again, have a good morning, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.